This episode is brought to you by Paramount Plus. If you don't already subscribe to Paramount Plus, please use our affiliate link by going to talkthroughmedia.com/Paramount Plus. Using our affiliate link gives us a little credit, which helps us to keep bringing you great content. U.S. residents only.
Hello, and welcome to episode 12 of Star Trek Strange New Worlds Talk Through. I'm Brian.
And I'm LT.
And we will be covering Season 2, Episode 2 of Star Trek Strange New Worlds, titled Ad Astra Per Aspera. And before we get started, we want to remind you that we provide early access to a virtually uncensored version of the podcast. I don't even know if that's true anymore. It's just an earlier version of the podcast that will go out before everyone else gets it. We recorded episode 1 that is should hopefully go out tonight to Patreon subscribers, and I say tonight as in Sunday the 25th of June. So we'll see if I can do that or not, and then we'll follow that up with episode 2. So we'll get them both out to Patreon subscribers first. If you want access to that early, you just have to donate as little as $1 a month, which help pays the bills, hosting, and the processing of the audio and whatnot, and audio hosting. So, because that's different than web hosting. Anyway, patreon.com/Star Trek TTM to sign up. So before we get started, we have some feedback. Actually, we don't, but we have some additional things to say on last week's episode, which is Season 2, Episode 1, titled The Broken Circle. So let's open hailing frequencies. And one observation, I have a feeling we're going to see Spock's mom at some point, because Pelia mentioned her by name. So I think we will see that at some point. And that is especially true after seeing this episode and this Vulcan prosecutor who is supposedly a foe of Spock's father, Sarek. So, and anyway, that exchange is part of my yeses. Anyway, the one thing I wanted to say is that after, mulling it over a little bit, I'm going to lower my rating of last week to a 9.25, which keeps it in line with the lowest episode of the season last year. I think the lowest was a 9.25. That was the Space Pirate episode. So that would probably be accurate with this one. So that's my take.
Okay.
And an additional spot to reference, certainly not a complete one, but I did not mention the Vulcan Lyre that M'Benga gave to Spock in that episode, which was something that Spock had in TOS. And does M'Benga have a closet of musical instruments to give to his crew? Anyway,
maybe he was a band teacher before he became a doctor.
Yeah. That was mentioned on a couple of podcasts that I listened to this week. They were commenting on his quick ability to provide an instrument, which I have to agree on that. So, all right. So unless you have any other things you want to say about last week, let's move on to this week. So Season 2, Episode 2 of Star Trek Strange New Worlds is titled Ad Astra Per Aspera. Written by Dana Horgan, not to be confused with the Horgon. That was a joke from last week.
That seems to be a pretty common line amongst most Trekkies.
Yes. Directed by Valerie Weiss. The description from ParamountPlus.com. Commander Una faces court-martial along with possible imprisonment and dishonorable dismissal from Starfleet, and her defense is in the hands of a lawyer who's also a childhood friend with whom she had a terrible falling out. The star date was 2393.8, air date in the United States and Canada of June 22nd, 2023. I don't know if the episodes air a day later everywhere else or if they're on same day, but I would be curious to know that. Because I know that in the case of Star Trek Strange New Worlds, it is airing, except in Canada, it is airing everywhere on Paramount Plus or Sky Showtime, which is also like affiliated with Paramount Global. So that is, I don't know if it's same day or if it's next day, but I would be curious for any of you that are overseas, in any international non-US, non-Canada markets, to let us know that. The runtime of the episode, at least in the US, is 57 minutes and 1 second. LT, what did you think of Ad Astra Per Aspera?
Well, I actually dropped out of the 9s this week. I gave it an 8.5 out of 10. Well, it's more of a guideline than a rule.
Yeah, I noticed that. So this is the first sub 9 of the series for you. So
that is correct.
I mean, it's still a decent rating, compared to our Walking Dead shows, but
indeed.
But it is a sub 9. All right. Well, as part of the adjusting of the ratings for last week, I had to try to give a better rating for this week. So, although my original rating for last week was a 9.5, I feel like that was somewhat sentimental. And also the fact that Pike was not in the episode very much, I realized that was affecting me more than the original rating that I gave. So, in thinking about this one, he wasn't in it that much either. More than more than the first episode, but he still wasn't in it a lot. So I had to factor that in. I did like a good courtroom episode. Those are always good in Star Trek. So I have to factor it in. But then when I think about it in terms of last season, this would have been slightly below average. So that's why I'm giving it a 9.4. Persecuted Mutants. And I used mutants because of it being Rebecca Romijn and her X-Men character, Mystique.
Yep.
I said mutants, but, you could say genetically engineered
and I was going to say that
humanoids.
I'm going to stick to my guns that I'm not going to change my ratings.
All right.
I watched it. I'm giving it what I'm giving it. And I guess I'm going to take my hardline Vulcan prosecutor stance and say it is what it is.
Yep. I gotcha. All right. So let's move on to our yeses. We don't have any ratings for anybody else this week. So let's see.
All righty.
Yes.
Or you could say,
now we're talking.
all right. LT, what do you have for yeses this week?
Well, I've got a few. My first big yes is the courtroom set. Now, for those of you who are observant and were watching Discovery, you'll notice that that is also a repurposed set, that was part of the promenade deck on Starfleet headquarters in the future. But with the redressing they did, I thought it was a very nice looking courtroom.
Mm-hmm.
And I certainly enjoyed the work they did to get that set up. One of my next yeses is something that I'm sure that you're going to talk about. I really enjoyed the whole scene with Spock and was it Pellick in the bar?
Yeah.
And then the sidebar commentary with Ortegas and M'Benga. And when Spock walked over, he goes, "I want to apologize for that outburst." And the fact that Ortegas was like, look at those two Vulcans sitting there being all Vulcan-y. And M'Benga was like, no, look at their body posture. They're having it out. And the fact that when Spock walked over, he pretty much said they were having it out. And I was going, yeah, there's nothing like a good cold-blooded Vulcan argument to break up the monotony in the bar.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I could say exactly the same thing, and I will. So,
one of my big yeses this week is we got more backstory on Una. That there's a lot of things that we've had questions about. We've kind of wondered because if you look at purely the original series take on it, we had one character that was in one episode that didn't air initially that had a lot of mythos built up around her. I know there have been some novelization things and some comic book treatments, but the fact that they went in to flesh the character out a bit more and it fit my expectations. It was the sort of backstory that I could be down with because it fit. They didn't do anything that was too wild, too weird, too out of there, that it fit the character, it fit the portrayal, and it worked. Because we had known that, number one, as a character, was an efficient, experienced, seasoned officer. And we found out that, she's been in Starfleet 25 years, that she's, done a lot of stuff and been involved in a lot of things. And there's a reason that the command staff that's worked with her thinks so highly of her. So that was good from my perspective. I wanted to comment that we got a proper Tellarite looking Tellarite this time, even though arguably he's a bit thin for a Tellarite.
Yeah, I thought that too. Thin and tall.
But the makeup looked good.
Yes.
That opposed to the sort of, how shall I say, more bald, more tuskier Tellarites that we've gotten previous to this, that he had hair.
Yeah.
He had more of the sunken eyes that we're used to seeing from TOS Tellarites. And then it turns out that I can't call his name, but it's the same guy who played Linus.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Yes, it was. And he's got like two first names. It's like, and it left me. It's like David Michael but he's another one of those actors that I would say as a younger guy carries on the Doug Jones tradition of being able to act well through appliances.
David Benjamin Tomlinson is the actor.
There you go. So, definite big kudos to him because I liked the way he portrayed the character. I've love the way he's done Linus on Discovery. And so again, another actor who can emote through the prosthetics, and it's definitely good to have him playing some extra characters in Star Trek because, I definitely enjoy his portrayals. A yes for this week is legal shenanigans. As you said, some of the best episodes of Star Trek have been some of the courtroom or court-martial episodes. We all, if you watch TNG, you liked Measure of a Man. We remembered Court Martial from TOS. We remember the episode, and it just zipped right out of my noggin. But basically where we bring Pike back in the beepy chair.
Mm-hmm.
So they've used the courtroom setting in Star Trek previously to some great success, and I think that they did that as well here. Odes to TOS as well, as they had the chair with the little hand scanner lie detector. That I thought that was a nice touch to not necessarily bring it full circle, but to use something that we would have expected to see given the era.
Mm-hmm.
I'm giving a big yes this week to the speech that Una gave when she was giving her testimony on the stand. Again, not so much that it was just giving us more backstory, but the fact that you can see that she really wants to be in Starfleet. That the whole thing of overcoming things that happened when she was a kid, and she met those Starfleet people, and she said, this is something that I want to do when I grow up. So a yes that, again, harkens back to a previous courtroom episode. I really enjoyed the fact that they whipped out the super big bound copy of the Starfleet regulations and the Federation laws, because I'm sure that you would either go further or definitely mention the fact that one of our previous lawyers, one Samuel T. Cogley, was all about books.
Right.
And, it's like not a pad, not something on some electronic reference, but an actual real, by God, paper bound book. When he said books, that's where the law is. The words of all the, jurisprudence that came before, and, and he rattled off all these different accords and things. But it was nice the fact that they had a genuine big bound copy of rules and regs. And my last yes, in the spirit of all courtroom dramas in Star Trek, you could argue that they got her off on a technicality, but it was the fact that she had actually done what she was supposed to do for this refuge or declaring asylum. That was it.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that it took her skilled lawyer to bring that out, because they really never went back to the whole thing about the augment law, but they basically found this, I don't want to say loophole, but basically that she could declare asylum because of all the other things, and, yay, she's good. So maybe it's a technicality, maybe not, but it did work out in the end. And so that's about all I've got for yeses this go round.
All right. Well, I don't have too much that I'm going to bring up, but on my end, we already talked a little bit about it, but the Spock scene with the prosecutor, I thought that was probably my favorite part of the episode. I think the humor was spot on, and I especially like the part at the end when Spock went up to Mabenga and what's her name? I'm blanking right now, even though I should know it. Ortegas, sorry. Please excuse that public outburst or whatever he says. I thought that was very funny. Anyway, I thought it was good. The scenes within the trial I thought were very good. I want to highlight the performance of the lawyer, and when I say performance, both as a character, like in other words, her what she was doing to get Una off of the thing. Everything she did, I thought was great, and I thought that the actress, who I had never seen before, was very good. Her name, and I don't know if I'm going to get this right, but Yetide Badaki.
It's like ETD.
Oh, Yetide. Okay. Anyway, her performance was really good. She made a really good lawyer, and I wasn't too sure about her at first when she first came in, but I thought the initial scene with Pike on the planet was interesting. So I'll give a good one for that. Good use of like a very cold Toronto. And just like, this is kind of the episode that I think should have started the season rather than the last one. It would have made more sense, I think, if it had been that episode and not this one. So that's
I think
my take.
You could argue in some ways it would have been a stronger season opener.
Yeah, I think it would have been. I mean, in terms of logistics, they would have had to change some things around, but nevertheless, I think it would have been a stronger episode. So,
well, and one thing I want to throw in as a comment to something that Rebecca Romaine said. Apparently, Yetide Badaki is a big Star Trek fan.
Oh, is she?
And according to Rebecca, she was basically out triviaing her in her knowledge of all minutiae Star Trek, which is kind of a big thing to do because apparently Rebecca Romaine is a big Star Trek fan.
Yeah.
So I thought it was nice to know that, they're bringing in somebody who is not just a great actor, but apparently well steeped in the mythos of Star Trek. So I think that would also help inform her performance.
And I wouldn't be surprised if we see her again. I don't know if we'll see her this season, but I could see her again. So
yeah.
Just kind of going off the cuff. I thought that the scenes between Battelle and Pike were interesting. I kind of liked how Battelle was kind of, I don't know. It reminded me of Riker in The Measure of a Man, where like Riker was kind of doing a job that he had to do, but at the same time, he was kind of rooting for Data. And
yeah,
I think by the end, you could definitely see that was the case with Battelle and Una. So anyway, I liked that. All in all, I thought it was a good episode. Certainly not the best. I am hopeful because I did hear on one podcast that the apparently those that have gotten the episodes ahead of time have said that these first two episodes were the least favorite for a lot of people, and that the other ones were a lot stronger. So that bodes well. So, because this certainly wasn't a bad episode, but it wasn't as good as, some of the episodes that we saw last time. So,
well, and given the fact that both of us are still pretty glowing in how we're rating these, and if these are the duds of the season, then I'm very excited, more so than I have been.
Yeah, exactly.
Because these are not bad episodes by any stretch.
No, definitely not.
So that's definitely going to be interesting to see what we get in coming weeks.
Yeah, I agree. All right, so let's move on and go to our nose. Let's go with Pike. So
let's go with Pike.
All right. LT, what do you have for nose?
Well, since you finished up with Captain Patel and how she was carrying on, my no is, I don't know, it's sort of a nuanced no, because it's not really a no, but it's still kind of no-ish. So, Admiral Pellick, I'm having some issues with our Vulcan Jag there, because it seemed like to me that he was awfully intent on crucifying Una. And it seemed to me that, logic aside, that he was all about the literal law as opposed to the spirit of the law. And so, Spock knows him from his dad, and apparently the guy was kind of a dick anyway, but it just seemed like to me that he was awfully gung-ho to be making this case.
Well,
and you could wrap lots of stuff around it and saying, well, it's his job and he's looking at his career. And as you said, Dale was doing it because it's her job, because not that she had any real passion to hang Una out, but, charges have been brought forth and she has to do her job.
Right.
But it just seemed like that Pellick was just wanting his pound of flesh, that he was seeing that this rule was broken and that I'm all for going in and getting a conviction.
Mm-hmm.
And, my side note is it kind of smells a little like Inspector Javert for you Les Miserables people, that, he was all about, she's guilty and I'm going to get a conviction.
Yeah.
To the point of they're overlooking all the stuff I'm going to talk about and not good enoughs, all of this, what's a good way to put it? All the rubberiness we seem to have over the Prime Directive, that we're going to go down here into the high numbered statutes and we're going to, crucify this officer because she lied about something 25 years ago. And she's had an admirable service record and all this great stuff and been an asset to the service. And while it's not necessarily the same analogy, it's kind of the same thing that during World War II, there were several people who enlisted underage, that they basically, forged their parents' signature on a form so they could enlist, and turned out to have, stellar careers and get a lot of commendations. And then they found out, well, you enlisted when you were, 16, and that you lied on your enlistment. but they took it to say, well, your service record was so great and you did all this great stuff when you were in and there was a war on. So we'll just kind of go, well, it's okay. We'll overlook it. It just seemed to me they were really just going all to town about this augment law.
I would agree.
And I'm going to pound on that a little bit more in the not good enoughs, but just that one particular character, it just seemed like that, he's not the guy that you would want as a traffic officer pulling you over and, writing you up for not signing your registration in black ink or, something that was minor, that while it is an infraction and, there's breaking the law and there's breaking the law. So.
Yeah, I would agree. Okay. So, the Vulcan prosecutor, seems to want to go after Pike, and that's what I wanted to comment about. So I don't know if this is like something that's going to be pursued later in the season or what have you, but he did seem to really want to push the idea of aiding and abetting, and that Pike was, was conspiring. Yes. So I think that this is why I was saying that I wouldn't be surprised if we see Spock's mom, especially with the Pelia reference from last week, and the possibility of I could see Pike needing Nira again for whatever this is going to be. But anyway, that was. It's not a no, but it's a no for just like, I don't know what rank this guy is, but he might as well be a bad admiral because.
Well, he is an admiral.
Okay, so that puts him in bad admiral territory. So I will say that ahead of time. So there's that, and I don't know. You may feel differently, but I didn't feel like we really got to the meat of the falling out between Nira and Una.
Yeah, we did.
Okay, so talk to me about it then, because
if towards the end when it goes into her testimony, it was Nira's brother.
Okay.
That got hauled off.
I see.
And so it was, she didn't speak up, and he's the one that ended up getting hauled off to wherever he got hauled off to.
Okay. I guess I missed that point.
Well, you had to kind of, it wasn't like she said it to where it was super, super obvious, but if you listen to the testimony, mm-hmm. and then look at the body language and the eye contact, and when they mentioned the name, what was the name of this person? It was, something, her last name.
Right. Okay. Well, anyway, I just, I thought that they could have done a little more with it, I guess.
Yeah. Well, and to be fair, I only picked that up on like the third pass.
Okay. That makes me feel better.
Okay.
All right. So let's move on to our not good enough section.
Not good enough, damn it. Not good enough.
Or as Spock would say,
that is not what I suggested.
I still like the not good enough. So LT, what do you have for not good enough?
Well, I have a few, and some of them are kind of petty, and then some of them are sort of, I don't know, let's say stock and trade of Star Trek, it seems. my first not good enough is La'an lied and the buzzer didn't go off. Now, is it because of whatever, recessive augment DNA she's got in her system that she can lie without setting the buzzer off? But when she gave her testimony, she told a story. She lied. And there was no buzz, no ding ding. So
refresh
we'll
my memory.
take that.
What was it that she lied about?
When did you know, or did you know, or did she tell you that she was Illyrian?
I did not pick that up as a lie, but
because she pretty much asked her, did you know?
Mm-hmm.
So that's again, maybe I'm wrong, but that's just my take on it.
Yeah, they mentioned that in the Ready Room, which I didn't get to see all of the Ready Room, but they did mention that buzzer was something from TOS that is kind of like a yes, I'm here, put your hand on the Bible or whatever, but like an identifier and also a sort of a lie detector.
And I guess my next not good enough is I'm going to go ahead and address the elephant in the room. For all the lip service that we give the Prime Directive, they sure do break, bend, skirt, play loose with that whole thing as, the first and primary regulation of Starfleet. And I don't know, maybe it's just me, but it just seems like that every episode, or not episode, let me back up, every series, every captain that we've ever had has some sort of fast and loose relationship with the Prime Directive. And we know that Battelle was talking to Pike and was sort of going after him saying, what did you do? When did you know it? And then danged if when April got up there, she knew his service record and she's going, well, didn't you do this? And didn't you do that? And didn't you do this other thing? So it does kind of play to the fact that we sort of ignore the rules when we want to, and that we sort of ignore the rules when it suits us. And it also goes back to what I was saying about Pellic, that it's, is it the spirit of the law that we are most concerned with, or the letter of the law? Because all of us know as fans that there were a few times when Kirk played loose with the Prime Directive. We know Picard did. We know Cisco did. We definitely know that Janeway did. I'm going to leave Archer out of this because there really wasn't a Prime Directive when Archer was there, but you could make the argument that it's because of the stuff that Archer did that there was a Prime Directive.
Yeah, exactly.
And so now we know that, Pike has had his opportunity in the Prime Directive chair, and he's also kind of not been a literalist. So it's just funny that seems to be, I won't say an ongoing joke, but it seems to be a thing where, yep, we're really serious about this Prime Directive thing until we're not.
It's true.
And the sidebar to that is, I guess everybody forgets what they did once they make Admiral, because I'm not saying that he wouldn't have expected it, but when April was getting his time on the stand, it's like they were going, well, Admiral Pike or Admiral April is not under, he's not the one getting charged here. But wasn't that exactly what Battelle said when Pike was saying that he wanted to testify, that they would bring up all this other stuff? Now, granted, Pike's situation is just a tad different because he was Una's commanding officer at the time all this broke down, and he had a direct line in it. But if they knew that this was going to be part of the thing when you take the chair, would April not even suspect maybe that there would be things that he did when he was captain that might come up later?
You would think so, but I guess the question would, you could argue that maybe he didn't think that that would come up because, that really wasn't a part of.
Yeah, he's not on trial.
And he, like, Una wasn't directly reporting to April
at that time. But she's been in his chain before.
But the vulnerability there is with Pike for the very reason that, that was brought up.
Correct.
That he was, he was aware that Una was Illyrian and yet, didn't act. And, so he was, this was adeptly dealt with by Nira, but nevertheless, it did make Pike vulnerable at the time, until the asylum argument got brought up, and I think accurately. That's true. So,
but I would still go back to, if did these guys previously, because just from not necessarily personal experience, but it's that thing of this was technically a skeleton in the closet for every commander she's ever had since she got commissioned.
Yeah.
So that's just one of those things that, apparently, we can overlook that.
Right. Right.
So the next thing I've got as a not good enough is just, again, another point of, I don't know, canon contention, since we brought it up, is so in Starfleet or in the Federation as a whole, apparently they have a problem with augments, genetic mutation or genetic alterations, and they have a problem with AIs. And, we've had down the line, we'll have a problem with data and the whole sentient device argument. And I've heard somebody posit to say that, well, isn't this just Earth forcing their experience on the rest of the Federation? And part of my argument would be is that if you want to look at, and I can't remember the guy's name, but there's some theorist that talked about parallel development of worlds. And even though, yes, Earth had a war over eugenics and genetic manipulation, who's to say that there wasn't similar experiences in other cultures only because the technology existed and they dealt with it, in their own way? But apparently it was a big enough issue that the Federation said that they don't like it.
Mm-hmm.
But it seems to me that you start running into, again, kind of muddy water, that in the future, we know that medicine has progressed to the point where diseases that are rife and endemic in current times are not a problem in the future, and that they were dealt with some sort of medical procedure. Well, are we not treading a thin line there? Is that some sort of, what defines augmentations? What I'm getting is if you can figure out a way to remove the genes that cause some sort of childhood disease and some sort of problem, then, is that not close to the same thing if we're dealing with medical research? I just think it's funny that we constantly go back to this thing about augments, that augments are bad and, augmentation is banned in the Federation, but yet we still sort of play around with it around the edges.
Mm-hmm.
It just, I guess, it's an issue that we make it one.
Yeah. I mean, I think it goes around to, like, genetically modifying the DNA versus genetically modifying something that, like genetically modified medicine, I guess you could say. So, like, I think if it's genetically modified grain, for example, I think quadrotriticale was probably genetically modified. That's a thing. I mean, pretty much all produce is genetically modified in a way, either like directly or just through selection. Like pretty much like every apple that you get was cultivated to be a strain of like this apple and this apple crossed with this apple and this apple. So like that, there's that kind of thing versus modifying the DNA of someone to make them strong or give them a better immune system or something like that. Or I'm also reminded of that season 2 episode of TNG. I can't remember the name of it. I was trying to remember it. But it's that one where Pulaski, starts really getting old because of the genetically modified children that have this like immune system that automatically seeks out and destroys any disease, but that also mutates anyone that comes in contact with it, and then they of course just simply filter it out in the transporter filter. Anyway, I'm reminded of that. So anyway, yeah.
Well, and just to move on from my arguments about augments. So Una's been in Starfleet for 25 years. So in the course of her 25-year career, she never went to the doctor. She never had a physical. She never had any kind of workup that would show any telltale signs of her being Illyrian, or she never got hurt badly enough that her immune system thing manifested itself.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the only question that I'd had because, in my past experience, in the military, we had physicals fairly often. At the police department, I had a physical pretty often. Once I got to a certain age, I had a physical every year that they poked and they prodded and they did blood tests and all that sort of stuff. So that's the only thing that I just kind of makes me wonder in some ways, did they not notice anything, of any aberration when she was getting all these physicals?
Yeah.
She would have had a physical when she joined. I guess I'm just kind of going, if we know it's there and we know it's a part of her body, what does that say about the state of Starfleet medicine? We can figure out all these other things, but we can't notice that you're Illyrian.
Yeah. And before you say your last one, I'm just going to give all of mine because they're all tied into all that stuff. So yeah. So there's the idea that she could pass. Well, what is she passing as? That's the question I have. Is she like, and for that matter, is she like supposedly excluded from service because she's Illyrian, or is it because she's a genetically engineered Illyrian? That I wasn't very clear on. And also, like, what is an Illyrian? Is an Illyrian like is Una basically a human, or is she humanoid and comes from a like they said it was part of their tradition, part of their culture to genetically modify. Okay, so does that mean that Illyrians are humans and are genetically modified. I know that there was an Illyrian in Enterprise that looked nothing like a human, right? In fact, I think there was Casey Biggs that played that role, who was, of course, played Damar on DS9. Anyway, so I'm a little confused with that point. Like, is she human, augmented, but like not in a superior way, but in a like kind of, I think it was brought that, it's kind of like maybe you would, in a very inhospitable environment, like the one, in the Volterra Nebula, where they modified to be able to breathe, and that's the extent of the modifications. And does that happen at birth, which it sounds like it did for Una? Do the modifications continue? Like, if they leave that planet, they go to some other inhospitable planet, do they get like some kind of like, injection to modify their DNA to make them be able to breathe sulfur or, whatever that environment is?
Or if they go to a planet that has a lower, oxygen count in the atmosphere, do they modify the lung structure so that they can get more oxygen out of the air?
Right. Or say a higher gravity. So, they're stronger, type thing. Like, this wasn't a genetic engineering thing, but you're not an Orville fan, but we've had a couple of security officers on the Orville that are like petite and yet are like super strong, and that's because they come from a very heavy, high gravity planet, and
make their bones denser and that sort of stuff.
Exactly. So anyway, that would be the question that I have there with that. So what does it mean that she could pass? And to what you're saying, like, her DNA, glowing or whatever to combat disease or whatever. What's going on with that? And for that matter, like going back to last episode and something you brought up, what about Lon and, her genetically engineered stomach? Like, was she able to drink vast quantities of blood wine because, she's got Noonien-Singh, fortitude, because she can consume alcohol.
She has a super strong liver and a super reinforced stomach lining.
Exactly.
Or did she just come from a long line of heavy drinkers?
That's another possibility. So, we'll see. But anyway, those are questions that I would have. I guess I will put this up in the pluses, in the yeses. Now that we say that, I would say Lon's reactions in this episode were also a yes. I liked Uhura's like, I'm not going to do that kind of thing, because it was a good thing, because like, two wrongs don't make a right is basically what Uhura was trying to get at. And it also makes sense that it was Una that kind of like, told on herself versus someone else, so go ahead. That's all that I have to say for Not Good Enough. So you have one more.
Okay. I have one more. And again, if you look at all the courtroom things, when we had someone who was a prosecutor from the JAG office. So Captain Patel, as a prosecutor, was wearing what color uniform? She was wearing command gold.
Gold, yes.
However, forward to the next time we get Kirk in a courtroom, the prosecutor was wearing red for operations.
Hmm.
And if you segue forward into TNG, and I can't remember her name, but the officer from the JAG office was also wearing command red.
Yes.
So I guess my question is it just a matter of where you are and the job you have? Or is this just an inconsistency based on the rank of the character? Are we going to have, is it possible to have a captain for this time frame, a captain in red?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we have seen, like in TNG era, we have seen captains in gold before. We haven't seen a lot of them, but I believe we have seen some gold captains from intelligence, I believe. And of course, we've seen Commodores with gold, with the Vulcan Romulan, what was her name? O? Yeah, Commodore O. So anyway, that would be my take. I think it does depend on it. And what color was the Vulcan again?
He was wearing the Admiral Blue.
Like
April and everybody else.
Yeah, see. And that's confusing as well, but
that once you're an admiral, you don't have to wear, you're no longer subject to the Wiggles colored shirts that you can just wear blue.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if there's an answer to that one, but it's good that you brought it up.
Well, it's just a question that I wanted to throw out there.
All right. Well, we have a voicemail, so let's get into our feedback section, and we actually have a bit of feedback this week as well. So let's open hailing frequencies. All right, so we've got a voicemail. Jeff from North Carolina, fellow Carolinian there.
Woo-ha.
Yes, X-Force 11. He was unable to watch, I guess, last week. So he mentions that a little bit in this voicemail, but here it goes.
Well, hello, Star Trek fans. It's Jeff, X-Force 11. I've had a busy 2 weeks, so I just caught up on the last 2 episodes of Strange New Worlds, and I am so glad this series is back. Season 3 of Picard was excellent, but to me, Season 1 of Strange New Worlds just outshined it in so many ways, and I am glad that Season 2 is back and at full strength, showing 2 very different episodes, the action adventure in Episode 1 and in Episode 2, Ad Astra, the courtroom drama. Excellent. You just feel the camaraderie of the crew, how it cares for each other, it loves each other. The writing is spectacular, and I just appreciate it because while we've only had a season and 2 episodes with this crew, it feels like we have been with them for so long, and that just speaks to the acting and the writing. I cannot wait to see what they're going to do with this season. All right, those are my thoughts. X-Force is out.
Well, thank you so much, Jeff, X-Force 11, for your feedback this week and your voicemail. Good to hear from you again. Unfortunately, your streak starts back up at 1, and I mentioned this last week. Well, you guys haven't heard it yet, although you'll hear it by the time you hear this. Jeff gave us voicemails for every episode of Picard, even though we never recorded an episode. So I think we owe it to him to eventually get back to Picard. So, and I know that both of us intend to do so.
And while there may have been a skip, I'm still going to declare that he's keeping the streak alive because we knew he had contravening circumstances, but the fact that he's still back at it, giving us voicemail. So
yeah, and
I will always say that Jeff is keeping the streak alive because he's been staggeringly consistent with our Star Trek stuff, and we appreciate it.
And worth saying that, everyone had the right to think that we weren't coming back, so the fact that we are back, that gives anyone a pass. But hopefully this week coming for episode 3, we'll get a little more feedback coming in. It would be nice to have that come in. So one thing he said I wanted to get your take on, and I don't think I've fully baked an answer for this myself, so I'm going to kind of figure it out as I go. But he thought that season 1 of Strange New Worlds was better than season 3 of Picard. What do you think about that? Since we really never have gotten to discuss it other than in an internal Talk Through Media chat thread that we have.
Well,
a loaded question, I realize.
It is a very loaded question. I think that I don't know if I can say one is better than the other because in a way, both of them were different.
Yes.
That, I love, chocolate vanilla swirl soft serve ice cream.
Okay.
I have since I was a kid.
Okay.
I absolutely, there's a place up the road from me that is basically kind of like a diner. They serve, in my opinion, the best hot dogs in North Carolina, but they have ice cream too. And they have a soft serve machine. And it reminds me of when I was a kid, there was a place on Main Street called Zesto's that is no longer there that had soft serve ice cream. And when I was growing up, that was one of the treats that I would get when I'd go with Dad to the barbershop. So I love soft serve ice cream. Now, I also have a thing for pound cake. Not anything on it, but just that slight lemon yellow Southern tradition pound cake. I love me some pound cake. Mama made some of the best pound cake ever. I miss my mother's pound cake, but I can't say that I love soft serve ice cream more than I love pound cake because I love both of them equally, but I love them for different reasons.
Yeah.
So I definitely thought that season 3 of Picard was the best of the 3.
By far.
I thought it was better written. I thought it was, it worked better.
More consistent.
You can argue that it was, a lot of fan service, but yet you had new characters. You saw our old characters working together that you never expected to work together. You got to see a lot of things happen, and it was great. Likewise, season 1 of Strange New Worlds was extremely consistent, and it was more of the good old days. It gave you that. To me, it was definitely giving me those TOS feels.
Mm-hmm.
Because one of the things about the difference between TOS and TNG is there's a lot of difference, because it seems like in TNG, while we're still exploring the unknown was not quite as big as the unknown in TOS. It seemed to be, in some ways, a much smaller universe in the Next Generation. So, while I love both of them equally, I love them differently. So my answer is, I don't know if I could pick one over the other because I love both of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
The thing with Picard is you got to see characters that you have grown up with and known and loved doing things that they've done, you've seen them do in the past with new wrinkles and some new changes. whether someone would be critical of it or not, you got to see character development in, say, Data that you would not necessarily have expected to see in TNG proper. You got to see a lot of exciting things and a lot of expansion and a lot of, interaction in Picard with familiar characters doing what we sort of knew that they were going to do, but you got to see them all together again.
Mm-hmm.
With Strange New Worlds, like Jeff said, we've got a core group of actors that you have more tightness in that group than you really did, I think, in, say, the first 2 seasons of TNG. That I want to say that in the first couple seasons of Next Generation, everybody was still feeling themselves out and sort of getting into a groove and getting the character interactions down so that what you got later was not what you started off with. As we've said before, Picard was kind of stiff and Riker was kind of not fully fleshed out. But when you look at Strange New Worlds, this crew seems to fit together well. They work together well. You get that sense of being experienced and seasoned and everybody doing their job. And that part of it, there's not that little awkward trying to find your spot. It's like everything was sort of well worn and fit together, and we're seeing them do their thing.
Yeah.
And I know people have talked about it, but it's, the difference in style between, say, a Picard and a Pike, that I think, I have to give credit to the entire cast, but I'll also give credit to Anson Mount for the way that he has filled that center seat. That, I like him as a captain. I think that he works well with his subordinates. I think that the level of confidence and the level of synergy that crew has comes out, the actors' performances shows us that they're working together well. And you can say, well, it's because the franchise is, well settled and all that sort of stuff. But I would also say that it's kind of lightning in a bottle again. You got a core cast of characters that work well together.
Right.
So my answer is yes. I love season 3 of Picard and I love the season 1 of Strange New Worlds. And I can't say that I like one better than the other because they each have their own nuance, their own reasons.
Right. I would say pretty much the same kind of thing. I mean, I loved the nostalgia factor of Picard, where it also, told some new things. And I think that it was very, very strong. I enjoyed that season as much as I've enjoyed any season of any of the new Trek. Is it better than Strange New Worlds? I don't know. I mean, that 2022 was and 2023 has been just an abundance of riches, I think, when it comes to Star Trek. I mean, everything that we've had has been outstanding. Lower Decks last season was outstanding, even though we didn't get to cover it. I thought that Strange New Worlds was outstanding last season. I see every direction or everything indicating that it's going to be as good. Picard was outstanding. Even Prodigy was outstanding. We're going to talk about Prodigy in we're not going to cover the news because we're going to have to cover that this week. It's too big not to cover it. So Anyway, I think we've just had an abundance of riches. So in terms of which is better, um, I love the individual episode telling of Strange New Worlds is great. And I like that I can basically visit a particular episode and I don't have to watch all 10 if I don't want to. So that makes it in a lot of ways better experience, because you can just go, if you have an hour to kill, you can pull up Memento Mori or the a number of episodes last season. I've watched the last episode quite a few times now when it ends up playing at the end of the last episode of Picard. I don't know how many times I did that. Whatever the last episode of Picard was at that time, it would play the finale of Strange New Worlds. And it's been doing the same thing now with Strange New Worlds. It plays the last episode of Picard. So anyway, let's move on. We've got feedback from fellow host of one of the Talk Through Media podcasts, another Star Trek podcast, of course, and actually two, Kim from San Diego, who is co-host of Rebinge DS9 and Star Trek Prodigy by Rebinge It. And I'd love to have her take on Prodigy right now. But anyway, LT, why don't you read that?
Okay. Well, Kim says, well, it's been a while since I've given feedback for this pod, so I don't even remember the categories anymore. But I will say so far, I've enjoyed this season way more than last season. Every episode last season just felt like I'd already seen it, with the exception of a few of them. I like the serious tone of this episode, and the performances were really good. And of course, a Vulcan was being a jerk.
Yeah, Vulcans are really good at being jerks. To that end, I will say to listeners, I think how we're going to give feedback for this season is we're just going to lump everything into feedback. So don't feel like you need to categorize. Don't feel like you need to put in your yeses and nos and not good enough. If you want to, you can, but we'll probably just give them in feedback with the hope that it will result in a slightly shorter episode. That's what we're trying to go for this time out. So,
well, it'll hopefully make it a little more streamlined.
That's the plan. All right. So unless you have anything on the episode, I already mentioned the one thing I was going to mention in my other notes, which was I have a feeling we're going to see this prosecutor again. And I really am concerned that we may see Pike go through some kind of, I don't know. He seemed to have a chip on his shoulder, going after Pike. Maybe he's going to go after Pike and Spock together. I don't know, but we'll have to see. I am curious about that. It might not be another trial kind of thing, but maybe he will be put up on charges for something he does. I don't know. We'll see.
We will see.
Yeah. All right. Spot the references section. I don't have too much I wrote down. But again, I'll try to wing things. The one thing that brought up I see is in contention now. So Trek Culture mentioned the Volterra Nebula, and I was curious about that because it seemed to ring a bell. So I looked it up, and it turns out that it was, at least in theory, and I'll get to see him next week, so I will ask him about this specifically. But anyway, The Volterra Nebula was a stellar nursery containing several dozen protostars in various stages of development. In season 6, episode 20, The Chase from TNG, the Enterprise D conducted a routine 3-week analysis of these protostars. They were visited by Professor Galen, who invited Picard to join him in completing an ancient genetic program left by the ancient humanoids. And Larry Nemechek, Dr. Trek, says, "No, sir, that is incorrect." What did you have to say about that?
Well, in TNG, it was the Volterra Nebula, Volterra. And apparently the nebula where the Illyrians live is the Volterra Nebula, Vaultera.
Okay.
So it's two different places. They just sound very much the same.
So, and how do we know that it was a different place?
Well, other than because Larry said so.
So
apparently when you look at the entry in Memory Alpha has two different places now.
Okay.
The Volterra Nebula and the Volterra Nebula.
All right. So to that, I have to say we will preemptively give myself
incorrect.
Okay. Well, then strike that from the spot the references. We get mention of Khan. That was specifically brought up. We had, then the rest of this is going off the cuff here. Pike mentioned something about, I think realizing that they were wrong about the Illyrians and what they did, I think. And he mentions the Ghosts of Illyria episode, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So, we have kind of an internal reference there. We have, a courtroom drama. We've had several of those in the past. We had in TOS, we had a couple of them. Court martial was one, and you could say in some ways that the menagerie was also one. And that's, of course, that directly involves Pike and Spock. The Measure of the Man, A Matter of Perspective from TNG. Trying to think if there have been any other episodes. I know there have been. I just can't remember them off the top of my head. But Courtroom.
Was it the Drumhead?
Oh, of course. Yes. The Drumhead. Yes. That was, that wasn't a courtroom. That was kind of a hearing thing, but certainly in the same, vein. And, that's one of my favorite episodes, actually, still. As is the Measure of a Man. A Matter of Perspective, not so much. But in terms of courtroom drama, it wasn't bad. And, we've even seen like some of that in Discovery too. With the stuff with what's his name? Booker,
Mm-hmm.
and it wasn't so much Booker, but the whole thing with I guess it was Booker. We've had that. We've had the Navarre stuff that was kind of courtroomish. We've had Burnham being in hot water for a few things. Her mother kind of was her advocate in that one episode. Yeah. So anyway, there've been a lot of different courtroom episodes, and I don't have the whole list here.
Yep.
But that certainly plays in. Is there any other things you can think of, LT?
Not really.
No.
I think we've pretty well covered everything.
Yeah. All in all, though, a decent episode. Certainly not the best, not the worst, but a good one. And like I say, if it's true that it's these two are one of the weaker episodes of the season, I look forward to seeing what we're going to get next. All right, so we will have a little bit of news here. Let's go into Shipwide Announcements. This is very disappointing news, and I'm gonna go to refer to something that Wes Huntington posted in our Facebook group, which, if you don't belong to it, of course, it is facebook.com/groups/Star Trek TTM podcasts. There's an article that he posted from Trek Movie that says that Prodigy has been canceled by Paramount Plus. It will actually be coming off of the network, or off of the streaming service, I believe at the end of the fiscal year, which I think is at the end of June.
End of the month.
Yeah. So if you haven't watched Prodigy, or you haven't finished it all, or you want to watch it again before it goes away, hurry up and get on it, because it will be taken off of Paramount Plus by the end of the month. So now what they're saying is, of course, they have shot, well, it's computer animation, so, shot is a whole thing, but it's in post-production, on season 2, and they've done a lot already towards it. So apparently Paramount Plus is allowing them to finish, and it is being shopped around. So I mean, I could see this going to Netflix, or Disney, or Max, or even Netflix,
or Amazon Prime.
I said Netflix first time. That's what I meant to say, was Amazon Prime. I could see it going to any of those, or it could go to, something smaller.
Or it could go to, what would make more sense is if they shopped it out to, say, Pluto TV, since Pluto is apparently one of the subsidiaries of Paramount.
Yeah, well, hopefully it will still be on Pluto. We don't know, but like, I know that season 1 of Prodigy can be seen there, but we'll have to see where it's going to land. But supposedly it will not be on Paramount Plus. Like, season 2 will not be there. Season 1 will actually be taken off. So,
well, hopefully they can find a place for it to land, since they do have the second season pretty much in the bag. I know that a lot of people are upset about this, but the only thing that I can say as far as a silver cloud, or a silver lining to the dark cloud, is, yes, we don't like the fact that they're dropping the series, but look at it from the standpoint of, we're to the point where a lot of streaming services are beginning to merge, where people are beginning to, we've gotten to the point where there's too many streaming services, and so they're starting to consolidate a little bit. And I would hope that this will at least keep, Paramount Plus in the Star Trek business. It could be worse. They could have dropped more than one series. So let's try to take it in stride on one hand. Now, I know that there are a lot of people that are trying to send in some petitions and write some letters to try to save Prodigy. I hope they could, but let's hope that it lands somewhere where we can keep watching.
Yeah, I think for sure it will. I think it will, especially with the fact that it's almost, it's unfortunate because, it's been a struggle for them to get all of the Star Treks in one place, and now we finally get them all in one place, and then they take this other one off. It's like it's. I don't know why the bean counters don't have the sense of keeping everything together. This is a successful show. I guess we don't know what the ratings are for. I think that Prodigy, they've had difficulty in marketing it. I don't think they knew what to do with it. I don't think it's been marketed well on Nickelodeon, really. So that wasn't much help to it. Like, why isn't it, more front and center on Nickelodeon? I don't know. I think those of us that have watched the show have loved the show. I think, there are probably a lot of people that never really gave the show a chance, and that it's probably the least watched of the new Star Treks, I'm guessing. But then again, I don't know. So, but people that I don't know many people that have watched it and have said, I didn't like this show. Like, it's been, there were a lot of people maybe that had that initial reaction with Lower Decks, or certainly Discovery or Picard, first couple seasons. But I didn't really get that for people that got into Prodigy. So anyway, that's about all we have to say, but it's unfortunate. Unfortunately, these things do happen. I think it is a victim of, like, it's funny. Okay. I will say this: in the previous regime, CBS Viacom was all about, not holding all your eggs in one basket. So they had, like, for example, a good example of this is Yellowstone, which is probably Paramount Global's most successful show right now, right? It's not on Paramount Plus. It's on Peacock, right? And if you don't have the Paramount Network, you don't get that show. Yet all of its offshoots, all of its prequels and all of that are a part of Paramount Plus. But that's kind of how they've done their thing. Like South Park, again, it's another Paramount Global property, but it is on Max and not on, what used to be called HBO Max, but now it's called Max. And I think what we're going to see is, like, Paramount pulled all the Star Treks off of the other networks, the other streaming services. And I think now they're going to start putting them back on. So what I'm hoping we're going to see is the ability to, for, maybe the shows like Picard, like Discovery will come next season. Like, those shows and the old shows will go back to other networks, to other streaming services, sorry. And, but not exclusively, so they'll farm them out to other, and they won't be exclusives anymore, but they'll be, like, if you want everything together, it will be with Paramount Plus, with the exception of Prodigy, but maybe they'll bring back Prodigy once it's in once season 2's over. I don't know, but it's just,
look at how the other networks are doing, because Disney Plus and Hulu are merging.
Right.
And as a part of that, Disney Plus is dropping some of their titles.
Right. Like,
whatever, I want to say, what was Discovery Networks?
Yes.
Rolled up under Max.
Right. And the same thing is happening here with Showtime. Showtime is getting absorbed into Paramount Plus. So it's going to be similar thing. Like right now, you can get them bundled together, and there are certain programs of Showtime that are available on Paramount Plus, but they're going to be one service. So,
And I think that's because they got to the point where not every streaming service could stand on its own. So you're going to see a recondensing of that market. So as a part of that, we may see where some of those titles might get farmed to a different streaming service because of the reintegration of some of the streaming platforms.
and it's possible that Paramount Global could be purchased by somebody.
Mhm.
It could happen, and
Or
if
they
that-
may do what some like Netflix does. They may start putting stuff on rotation.
right. I tend to think that that this is kind of it's. I said it in our chat group that this is kind of post COVID. So what you had was a streaming boom during COVID because people were at home and they didn't have much else to do. They weren't, going out so much. So they were streaming. They were playing video games. They were, doing other things that we won't talk about. But anyway, they were doing things online. And there, I think LT, you'll get that joke in a minute, but they were consuming everything, and now we're post COVID, although COVID's still a thing. In fact, one of our friends has it right now. But
it's not
COVID,
a thing like it was.
It's not a thing like it was. People are back working at the office. It's people aren't wearing masks like they were. They're going out. They're enjoying the summer, and they are not. They're not using multiple streaming services like they were. And I think I haven't watched or read a report about it, but I'm assuming that you could probably do a survey and find that, the average amount of time people are watching streaming services is probably down right now compared to where it was a year or two ago or 3 years ago. So, this is a normal thing. And so what we're starting to see again is the reverse of the reverse consolidation. So it's instead of you putting your property exclusive, you're syndicating them essentially to other services, and there probably will be some services. This is already happening internally with several services like Disney and Hulu and Discovery Plus and HBO Max, and now Paramount Plus and Showtime. These companies that have multiple streaming services are consolidating them into one. We're probably going to also see services merge. So, Paramount Plus could eventually be bought up by Netflix or by Amazon Prime, or, who knows? So I would not be surprised if that happens. So anyway, let's move on. I have to get going. I got called into work, but for Parent Analytics, even though they haven't done their top 10 in a few weeks, I was able to pull up the 30-day, and the 30-day versus last week, Star Trek Strange New Worlds is up. Last week it was at a 24.2 times the demand of an average show, and this week it is up to 28 times the demand of an average show. So it's still in the outstanding category, but it is going up. And if we compare this to, say, let's look here. The last time that they did their insights, It was the week ending June 9th. And if the numbers are the same, this would put Star Trek Strange New Worlds into the top 10 because the number 10 was at a 24.6, and I would actually put them at about number 9 if the numbers stay about the same. Because the number 9 show, The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, was at a 27.1. So it's at a 28 right now, and that's good. So it is in the 99th percentile right now in terms of action and adventure, and it is at 100% versus other shows. So that is all that I've got for news. LT, I'm going to let you take it from here and tell people how to contact us while I use the restroom.
All right.
All right.
Well, to submit your theories and feedback, you can go to talkthroughmedia.com/feedback, where you can submit text or audio. You can call area code 216-232-6146 and leave a voicemail. You can email us. That's strangenewworlds@talkthroughmedia.com. You can post in our designated episode thread in our Facebook group. That's facebook.com/groups/Star Trek TTM podcasts. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Star Trek TTM. If you'd like to support the podcast, you can like our page on Facebook. That's facebook.com/talkthroughmedia. And while you're there, write us a review. You can share us on Facebook and retweet us on Twitter, especially when we post new episodes are out. You can subscribe to the Talk Through Media YouTube channel, which is where you'll find our newest episodes first, unless you're a Patreon subscriber. You can subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts or the podcast client of your choice, and while you're there, give us a rating or a review. You can go to podchaser.com, where you can rate and review the podcast and even individual episodes. Finally, the best way to help us keep the lights on the podcast is to support us via our Patreon. Now, we would like to thank our Patreon subscribers: Jeff Lorenzen, Andrew Davis, Morning Pace, Mike Johnson, Robert Kaiser, Jeff Gentry, X-Force 11, Kevin Lyle, Michael Carrier, Kim Vogley, Kyle McAdams, James Robbins, and me. Remember that all the podcasts from Talk Through Media can be found on the Talk Through Media all-inclusive feed, which includes Rebinge Deep Space Nine, the Star Trek Discovery podcast, and the Walking Dead Talkthrough. Currently, Kyle and I are working Fear the Walking Dead Talkthrough and the Walking Dead Talkthrough, and currently we're working on the Walking Dead Talkthrough Dead City Edition. So next week, our next episode of Star Trek Strange New Worlds Talkthrough, Season 2, Episode 3, which is titled Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. It was written by David Reed and directed by Amanda Rowe. And the description is La'an travels back in time to the 21st century Earth to prevent an attack which will alter humanity's future history.
Ah, where did you get that?
It sounds exciting to me.
I love time travel. Yeah. All right, so until next time, I'm Brian.
And I'm LT.
Peace and long life.
Live long and prosper.
Kapla.
Kapla.
Although not appropriate for this episode, it would have been more appropriate last episode.
Well, there you go.